You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This is episode 105 of Retired Racehorse Radio on the Horse Radio Network, part of Equine Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products and Cashel Company. Retired Racehorse Radio is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse. Brought to you in cooperation with the Retired Racehorse Project and New Vocations Racehorse Adoption Program.
On today's show, we're chatting with makeover veterans Erin O'Keefe and Jackie Barr to get their hot tips on following their favorite racehorses and making their virtual stable a reality. We catch up with Making the Makeover writers Jesu and Adriana Nanninni and how their training is progressing for their makeover horses. We wrap up with a training tip from Leandra Cooper and introduce our adoptable horse of the week. Stay tuned.
And they're off on Retired Racehorse Radio, the podcast that is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse.
This is Joy Orr in Detroit, Michigan.
And this is Kristen Kovach Bentley in Jamestown, New York, and you're listening to Retired Racehorse Radio.
Kristen, do you even know how excited I am right now with this weather? I mean, I hate that it's hot, but I love that it's not winter.
That's like the trade-off anymore, right? In the North, we used to get seasons, and now we just get winter and summer.
But I'm like, I'm here for it. I hate the flies. My horse is sad that I'm making her live outside most of the time these days. She only comes in to eat and for a quick afternoon nap. And then she's like, why are you putting me back out here? Like, it's building character. But
yeah, and I'm just trying to count my blessings too. Like, my horses are on full turnout. Like, my chores have gotten a lot easier. Like, everything is great.
It's a beautiful time. I would love it to like slow down just a little bit. Like, let's just bask in this, because I hate we're already in June, but it's all right.
Yeah, that
beggars can't be choosers.
Not when you live in the North like we do. Yeah,
no, but I feel like I definitely am spending a lot more time at the barn these days, which is really lovely. And I've had some achievements. I'm super stoked.
Tell me about them.
So, as you know, last episode, we tried a new bit. It was a success, but I didn't want to try the spurs yet, just in case it went poorly, like too many changes too fast.
Right.
I just didn't need to push her like that. So now that we were good on the bit for about 2 weeks, I'm like, okay, let's try the spurs. For one, I didn't understand that I could fit spurs to my boots. That was a mental struggle for me to overcome. I've never ridden in spurs before. I'm like, these don't fit. I was like crying at my lesson.
Oh, yeah, right. Because with an English spur, you can just like whop, and just kind of open them or close them. Yeah, right, right.
I thought I was stupid and ordered the wrong size off Etsy. Oh, turns out I can just bend them. Lessons learned.
Bend them to your will. There you go.
Lessons learned. So, because all my horses have ridden perfectly off my leg. Like, if you had added a spur, I would have been in New Mexico. It would have been a horrible decision for me. So this is all very new.
Yeah, it's fine. You're learning. It's going well.
I'm learning with my horse. I will tell you, the first time I used these spurs, Kristen, my horse did not care.
Really? Oh, great. Yeah, because I was like, well, this is going to go one of two ways.
Yes.
And I thought it was going to be the other way. So
yes. Okay. Well, and she's like quite, what's the best word for this? I always say spicy. She is opinionated. That's a good word to say it. She knows what she likes and what she doesn't like, and she will let you know when she doesn't like something very quickly. So I was like, well, we'll see what happens. And the first, I was like really dainty, and they're just rollerball spurs. Like, they're not anything like crazy Western, anything like that. And I just like pushed a little bit, like just testing the water, did not react, to the point I had to like push in still with my leg pretty significant. She's like, what's that? Are you asking me something? And I was like, oh, well, this is great. I've had all the confidence after that. So then I just started using the spurs correctly. And I'd say we have a 75% reaction to them, which is good. She's mostly moving off them. Sometimes she's like, I'm good with the pressure. And she just continues to do what she wants. But it was still a success. And then I just entered a little online show. Our fields have been kind of wet, and we only had one away show. It was like a hunter trial type thing, not really our speed. But I wanted to get something in for a baseline. So we did the online show. And she was a little bit tense. She had some allergies going on. So I'm like, maybe it wasn't the best day to do it. but we still ended up scoring a high 60, which was nice.
Nice.
Yeah, she actually got a 7.5 on her coming down the center line and a very square halt.
Excellent.
So that was nice to see that score. We did have like 2 5s, like, it's okay. She was a little tense and couldn't breathe. She gave herself a nosebleed later.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
She got herself all stressed out.
She sure did.
Oh,
so
honey.
she is now on allergy medication. She's doing much better. We think she has some like new weed that's growing in the pasture that we don't understand, but she's now on allergy meds, doing significantly better. So she was a little bit of distress.
Oh, dear.
So I'll take those 5s. But the fact we still got a 60, and I'm like, 60 dealing with allergy issues and not very comfortable. I imagine this would have been like a decent 70 had you been okay.
Yeah.
So that was
awesome.
promising. That was promising. But you had a much more exciting time than I have. I was like cheering from the gram watching you and Eric at your horse show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we kind of kept it like a little on the DL. Like what I would like to do later this summer is like a full weekend takeover, because we're hoping that Jobber is going to dust his show pants off and come back next time. But yeah, we took Wes and Shorty. So Eric's thoroughbred and then my standardbred. Poor Wes just sort of got like yanked off the bench. Normally I would like to do a lot more conditioning work to make sure he's fit to show, but we did a really light class.
Keep them on their toes. It's good for their character.
Yeah, right. That's one thing Wes loves is surprises. No, but he went and he was great. Yeah, he's a good little nugget. I mean, I kind of gave him like a idiot's crash course to ranch roping over the past couple of weeks. And he was like, well, okay. So, and I kept telling people all weekend, they're like, oh, you're going to do the roping with Wes? And I was like, yeah, like, Wes's neck reining is really not great and he's not super broke to move off the leg. So if I kind of like point him at a cow from a distance and sort of push him off like a sailing ship and the cow is still there, like we're in good shape, which entertained people. And of course, that's not at all what happened. So, we just sort of immediately scattered the herd and then floundered around, but we did get our catch after the whistle blew, but in my mind, it still counts. So it was great.
Yeah.
Eric got the only legal catch in the ranch roping in the whole show. So he did his usual fabulous job. He's like getting himself a reputation as like our crack roper, and we still are all not very good. So it's like the crack roper of not a very good herd of ropers, but we have a good time and it represents the thoroughbreds well, that like he goes out and is, just dropping bombs on cows. So it's a lot of fun. So, and it was just, we were really glad to even get there with Shorty because a couple weeks prior, of course, I had Jobber in Ohio for the surgery on his lymphoma. And they were like, well, you can leave your trailer out here if you want. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. Like, I don't need to haul an empty trailer 4.5 hours home and then turn around 2 days later and haul it all the way back. So I left it there. And then we were riding on Tuesday and Shorty stepped on a stick and jammed it up into his foot.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I remember those texts.
I was like, I don't know what to do. I apologize for everyone whose ears I just shrieked into, but that's basically what my brain was doing that whole time. So, like you're not supposed to remove the thing in the horse's foot, but of course we were moving a cow at the time. So we were just kind of like trying to hustle through it. So of course he snapped the stick off like flush with the bottom of his foot. But luckily, it went into like the back of the heel bulb and it went in at a super shallow angle. So it didn't go like up into any of the important structures as far as we could tell. Ideally,
lucky.
He's really lucky because if you are listening to this and you've never dealt with a foreign body in a horse's foot, like what you ideally want to do is stabilize the object and then immediately get the horse in the trailer and go for x-rays so that you can see if it did puncture, the joint capsule or hit any of the soft tissues.
Yes, don't pull it out.
Don't pull it out, which is kind of what the only option given to us at the time because we had no trailer because I stupidly left it 3 states away.
He knew.
He was like, look at me, bam. So weirdly, he was super sound. There was a chunk of stick in there that we just couldn't get out. So this is like, again, not what you want to do, but I wrapped it up with Icthamol and the next day it had drawn the stick out. The wound was clean. There was no drainage. It did then abscess out the back of the foot. So that drained for a while. So we brought him. I was like, Eric, I don't know if you're going to be able to show him, but honestly, I don't want to saddle a horse sitter with like having to change his abscess bandage. And we've already paid for the stall. So we brought Shorty with us with his foot wrapped and then Magna waved it. And that really helped dry it up. And he was sound. So we went for it and Eric showed him and he was fine. And now the the abscess site is dried up and it's growing out. So again, maybe not like, an A+ guide in horse ownership here,
No,
but
it was definitely a
for
freak
us.
event. But I will say, he definitely wanted to make a claim that standardbreds are resilient.
Yeah, well, that was Shorty the thoroughbred, which is shockingly resilient for him, because normally he's like, he's vision impaired. He's like, drops weight all the time, but he was like, my feet are good though. So
but
fine,
Jobber
whatever.
can't get all the attention either.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. So I would like to say I've had my 3 things now. So we've had Jobber, I mentioned the impaction, I think last episode, we had an impaction colic early in the month, and Shorty trying to chop his own foot off. So I think hopefully
you should be good for a minute, I guess it's my turn, unfortunately.
No. We're not passing that baton. Yeah. that baton is being buried in the ground. So anyway, we're just happy to be here at this point. So,
well, I'm glad there's good news on this on multiple sides, mostly that you had a great show weekend. And I remember at the beginning of the year, you just wanted to be able to rope a calf. Like that was your big goal. And I feel like you're doing it consistently now.
I technically did it. So, and then I got to ride Jobber the other night and I was like, oh my God, it's so easy to rope cows off this horse. So not that I want to come in with a big ego.
You need a harder goal. Wrap 2 cows. That's what you got to do.
Well, let me like rope a calf legally within the time allotted in the class. All
right. I'll allow it. I'll allow it. I guess we don't need to push the edges too much.
Little baby steps, Joy. Baby
steps. Well, luckily all our horses are happy and healthy now. And we are so happy to be sponsored by an amazing company that keeps our horses happy and healthy. And that is Kentucky Performance Products. And we're going to hear a little message from them now.
This Nutrition Minute is brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products, the company that simplifies your search for research-proven nutritional supplements at kppusa.com.
If you've ever had a horse with diarrhea, you know what a frustrating problem it can be. Finding an ingredient that works to dry up the diarrhea becomes a high priority. It turns out that researchers have found one, a yeast called Saccharomyces boulardii. It has been proven to improve and halt episodes of diarrhea. It supplies specific nutrients to the lining of the small and large intestines, and these nutrients promote healing of irritated tissues. It also supports improved starch and sugar digestion in the small intestine, reducing the opportunity for imbalances to occur in the hindgut. Nalox Advanced, made by Kentucky Performance Products, contains Saccharomyces boulardii, along with a blend of fermentation solubles and stomach buffers. Nalox Advanced is recommended for horses of any age that are suffering from diarrhea. It also supports a healthy digestive tract in horses at risk for gastric or colonic ulcers, such as performance horses or any horse that is constantly on the go and exposed to stressful situations. For best results, Nalox Advanced should be fed on a daily basis.
This Nutritional Minute has been brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products. You can find all of their terrific products at kppusa.com.
So I'm really excited about our guests tonight. We have 2 makeover veterans with us. We have Erin O'Keefe, who competed in 2021 with Denman's Call. And we have Jackie Barr, who competed with Finnick the Fierce in 2022. And if those names sound familiar, it's because those were both some really cool stakes horses back in their day on the racetrack. And Joy, I think you introduced them really brilliantly in the intro to this episode when you said they're going to tell us how to make your virtual stable a reality, because these girls go way back with these horses, like all the way back to when they were like foals, weanlings, yearlings, and then followed their careers and then like lived every horse lover's dream of bringing their favorite racehorse home. So Jackie and Erin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.
So Jackie, we'll start with you. Finnick the Fierce, I think, captured a lot of hearts on the Derby Trail because he had one eye. And everyone was like, that's so cool. And I know he ultimately didn't end up, contending the Derby. But I know, he had a huge fan following along the way. So how did you first get to know him?
So my story with Finn kind of starts because of Erin. When I moved back to Kentucky after graduating from the University of Kentucky, I had moved to Maryland to work on a warm blood farm there, and I moved back. I reached out to Erin, who I became friends with in college, and she got me a job at Millennium Farm, which Millennium Farm was where Finnick the Fierce was born. And actually in the same year that I moved back in 2017 in the fall, just after the September sales, and then started at Millennium right after that. There's been kind of question of, did I actually like touch him as a foal, or did I just, pass him in a barn, or I'm not sure if he had been weaned and left the farm at that point, but we definitely like had a very parallel entrance back into Kentucky, if you will.
I love that.
From there, I followed him on the racetrack, and but definitely like I learned about him because I worked at Millennium, because Erin had worked with his breeder, Paige Gilster, and so I kind of just knew about him right from the get-go there, with all those people connected.
Was there anything in particular about him that like captured your, imagination or your heart right away?
I think really the first thing was just like the community of the people who knew him. Like I said, I'm not sure if I actually worked hands-on with him right at the start there, but I got to know everybody from his breeder to his owner to everybody who kind of was involved in his life right from the get-go. And it was just kind of fun to be a part of this community where like everybody was watching this horse start his training and start his racing career, and then like, oh shoot, it's actually going really well. So yeah, that's kind of what got me really to love just him as a horse.
Yeah. Well, and everything he embodied, right? Like, because that's what they say, that a racehorse is the only animal that can take like 1,000 people for a ride at one time. So that's really cool that you're, part of his squad. So, and then how did he come to retire and then end up in your barn?
So through my connections, like at Millennium Farm, I worked with Arnaldo Monge. He was the vet there, and he was co-owners when Finn was racing. And then still, I've been kind of working after my full-time job. I go to the farm and spend time with horses, work with the horses at BTE stables, and Arnaldo is the reproductive vet there as well. So once Finn was retiring, I was in contact with his wife, Thina, who comes out and is wonderful. So we got connected through Erin, through BTE stables. And they were people that I had already known. And I was kind of casually looking for a horse at the time. So when his name came up that he was looking for a retirement place, I was like, okay, all right, let's do this. This is the horse.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's a testament to like, get your name out there, get what you want, do the thing. Oh, that's so
Absolutely.
Great. I love that. So Erin, BTE Stables, of course, that's your farm. So I love that you have basically like a pasture full of former stakes horses all running around together, because you have a couple of your own. So who do you have?
So I have Denman's Call, and he is a grade 1 winner. He was gelded before his race career started, and then went on to, I think, have more success than anyone really thought he would. So as a gelding, he still needed a second career, and he's actually turned out in a field with Finn. And it's quite fun to get to watch them play, and they like to rear up and box. And Finn is probably 16.3, and Magoo is maybe 15.2. So it's really funny to watch them rear and try and box each other. And Magoo goes very straight vertical to try and be as tall as the bigger boys. That field also has another gelding that I knew from the time he was little. He did not achieve the success they had hoped for at the track. His name's Phantom of the Nile, and he's a Pioneer of the Nile out of a Malibu Moon mare, just absolutely royally bred from the family of Malathat. He sold for $300,000 as a yearling at Saratoga and raced once. And then Todd Pletcher called the owners and said, he doesn't want to be a racehorse and I can't make him. And that's when he was retired.
Good for you, Todd.
I know. See, all the press sometimes, but it's like, they make good calls. They do make good calls out there.
That was the right call. I love that. So now I know in particular, like I'm more familiar with the story on how you acquired Denman's Call, and you call him Magoo. So we'll just call him Magoo for the sake of the conversation. So how did you reconnect with him?
So the reason I call him Magoo is I started working at TaylorMade, where he was born when he was about 5 days old, I think, or so, in 2013. And when they're that young, they're not named yet. And his dam's name is Maggie McGowan, which does not abbreviate well for a colt. So he just became Mr. Magoo, which stuck. And so I followed him along. I follow all of, my kids that I've worked with at the track. And obviously he was quite successful. And thanks to the wonders of social media, I kind of connected with one of his breeders and had tweeted, good luck today and things like that. And when he hit the end of his race career, it was the fall of 2019, and he was based out of Santa Anita. And that Breeders' Cup was there that year. I happened to be in town for it, and he hadn't worked in like a month. And so the trainer that I knew there introduced me to his current trainer, who told me that one of the breeders had stepped in and retired him. And he was bred by partnership of 3 different individuals, only one of whom I had contact with at any point in time. And so sitting in the airport, getting ready to fly back to Lexington, I just figured, why not? And I messaged to see if maybe the one breeder that I had, tweeted back and forth with a few times, maybe happened to be the one who had retired him, and he actually was. And so put me in touch with the rehomer who had him at the time. And one thing led to another, and I ended up with another gelding.
I love that. That's awesome. So, and what I think is really interesting is like, you just basically track the guy down on social media, like, and I think that's how a lot of people are making connections, like, yes, there's a ton of thoroughbreds out there, and you can go to like, a New Vocations or, your favorite reseller and probably find one that meets your needs. But like, you can also connect with one, like both of you obviously had, connections that run a little deeper than like, oh, I saw that horse run once and he's really pretty, but like you can use these tools and actually like get in touch with people. Cause I think like, someone like me that didn't grow up in the industry or didn't work in the industry for very long, like, it feels almost like untouchable, like you can't just like tweet to Todd Pletcher and ask him about a horse, but apparently you kind of can. So, so I think that's really interesting, to be like, hey, if you're interested in a horse, like put your name out there. So, Erin.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Joey.
I was just going to say, like, even if you're attracted to like a certain sire that you love on the track, like I feel like when California Chrome was going, everyone's like, I want a California Chrome, baby. And then you had the Justify gang, and like everyone came with each Triple Crown. But it's how do you follow them and see, like, how would you recommend, like, an everyday person who doesn't have the necessary race connections could follow some of these foals coming on the ground in a good way to, stay in touch?
I mean, the virtual stable is a great tool. That's pretty much how I follow mine. I actually was cleaning out my virtual stable a couple months ago and realized that Denman's Call was still in there with his little note of like, this is Mr. Magoo from back when he was 2. But yeah, you can follow along there once they're named and watching races and things like that to see, oh, like that horse is one that I, has a great trot. I mean, I definitely have put horses in my virtual stable and been like, that one definitely wants to be a hunter. It does not want to be a racehorse. And so, yeah, and following that and then utilizing social media, because I think, yeah, it's great to be able to like have a connection where you get someone's cell phone number and you can text a trainer. But I mean, at the end of the day with Magoo, I did have the trainer's contact info, but he didn't know who I was. I'm someone who says they worked with this horse years ago when he was a foal, and it ended up being through just connecting on social media that I ended up getting him back anyways. So I think things like Facebook and Twitter and things like that, like, don't be afraid to shoot your shot. There's a lot of people in the industry that are happy for a horse to go back to somebody who knew it or somebody who appreciates it, whatever it is that they appreciate about them. my other gelding, Phantom, came to me. I stayed in contact more directly through his agent and owners. And when he retired, they actually had an offer for a couple thousand for him. And he was still intact at the time. And the owner was kind of insulted by that, I guess. I don't know how much he thought he was going to get for a, fresh off the track colt at that point in time. But he goes, well, for that amount, we should just give him to that girl that always liked him. He did not know who I was. I had only ever talked to the agent on the horse, but she had told him about me. And so they decided that instead of taking the money, they felt better knowing he was with someone who had always liked him and had followed him. And that made them feel better about what kind of home he was going to be in rather than, $1,000. So, you'd be surprised what connections are willing to do and where their priorities might be for getting those horses into a good home.
I love that. So, all right, listeners, don't be afraid to slide into someone's DMs if you're interested in a foal. Like, that's all I'm hearing.
Exactly.
I will say, I think you have better luck. Like both of these, like I know Denman's Call, you mentioned he was gelded before he got to the racetrack. And Jackie, was Finn gelded before he started running or like mid, like where did his gelding journey begin? Because I think you're more likely to find a gelding than like a stallion prospect, right? And be like, hey, can I have that one?
I believe that he was gelded pretty early. Like I have a feeling it was like once he lost the eye, I think it was not long after that. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Yeah. Okay. So he would have run as a gelding. Yeah. So yeah, generally, like, especially like, you two happen to be talking about some stakes winners, but generally your intact stakes winners are most likely going to go on to some form of a stud career. But yeah, like if you see a nice gelding that you like, yeah, this is what I'm hearing. Yeah. You two are just enabling. You guys are.
That's what I live for.
Yeah. Perfect.
I would say that Erin is a little bit more connected in the world than I am, but I have definitely slid into a bunch of people's DMs just about different horses over the years. And a lot of them have been really wonderful. So I really encourage people to just like, who was the last trainer on that horse? And just find them on Facebook and send them a message, because even if they don't have the horse at the moment, they can tell you the last thing they knew about them. And people have been really receptive to it in my experience.
That's good to know. Yeah. Like I haven't had like super open experiences with the connections of the two thoroughbreds I have, but it's stories like these that remind me like, maybe I just happened to have experiences that weren't so great. It's not like that I had bad experiences. They just weren't, responsive, which is fine. It was just, maybe this is just not the horse for them. It didn't hit their lives the same way. So, I know that for every story of like, oh, there was great connections and they wanted to learn more, there's people that are like, well, I never got in touch with mine. But, I think, just like the equestrian world, the racing world has all kinds of folks in it. So yeah, these are great stories to hear that people are still connected. So,
and I think it's worth remembering too, that sometimes a horse might have both types of connections,
right?
The trainer that Magoo retired with and those connections didn't have a huge interest in communicating, but then his breeder texted me for my address to send me something and asked if I'd be home one day. And I'm thinking like, oh, like maybe he has a hat from when he was racing or something. And it was his trophy from winning the grade 1 because he thought I would like it, which I did. It is the coolest thing I have.
That's so
but
cool.
you can definitely have a horse that has a mix of connections. So even if you reach out to one person connected with a horse and don't have a positive response, sometimes it's worth like digging around a little more and seeing if you can find anybody else.
I love that. So where else would you recommend that people go just to see horses?
To pick out their future off the tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the paddock at Keeneland. When I'm betting, I like to, you pick the ones that you think are going to be good prospects for the race to bet, and ones that you think are probably going to finish last, but might do quite well at the makeover. I also personally, when I'm at like the yearling sales or the breeding stock sales, have been known to make notes of, hunter type or eventer type and try and keep tabs on them as well. I think that your horses of racing age sales, you can actually find a lot of good prospects there that are actively available, or just to go sit at the back ring at Keeneland and watch, like we said, like some of those Justifies and the American Pharaohs go through, and pick out your favorite and see. And if they don't pan out as a racehorse, which, statistically a good chunk are going to end up in a second career outside of the breeding shed, you can follow them from the beginning and gives you more time to shoot your shot with the various connections and get yourself on their radar.
I love that. All right, great. So this is, just like enabling a little bit of friendly stalking. Very cool. Well, all right. Where can listeners follow along on your collective journeys? Jackie, do you have public social media where we can cheer for Finnick the Fierce in his second career?
I do. So he has an Instagram and a TikTok. The TikTok I can't find the password to, but eventually there will be more videos on it. But so Finnick the Fierce on Instagram, it is Finnick _the_fierce, and he's posted on there. And I also had done a little writing for the blog for the Retired Racehorse Project last year, so you can find us. Just Google Finnick, and you'll be able to find a bunch of our blogs.
I love that. Perfect. And Erin, where can listeners follow along with all of your animals?
So Magoo has a Facebook page. She's Denman's Call 2021 TB Makeover grad. That being said, it does not get updated very often anymore. And so, he has that technically, but I would say the BT Stables social media channels, we have a Facebook page, an Instagram, and a TikTok account. And that is where he probably makes most of his appearances. His second career has become babysitter and yearling prep pony. So he's not spending a lot of time in getting ready for any additional competitions or shows, so much as hopefully teaching my yearlings how to be very fast racehorses in the future and guiding the next generation.
That's an important job, man. Someone's going to do it.
It is.
Hopefully he's a good mentor.
And it's not for the faint of heart either.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on and hopefully enabling a whole bunch more listeners to go to the races and start jotting down some names they like.
Absolutely. I'm happy to usher in anybody who's interested.
I love it.
I say I'm a dedicated enabler, as is evidenced by Jackie's ownership of Finnick the Fierce.
That's what this entire show is about, is enabling the adoption of horses that you may or may not need. And we're proud of it.
Well, thank you both again.
Thank you, guys.
I'm here with Tony from Cashel. You all know it from the ads you hear all the time on this show. But we're at the trade show, and this is the point of time in the year where we find out what's new coming out. So what's Cashel have new coming out?
Oh, we've got a great lineup of 32, 34 wool top pads.
So describe them.
5 different colors, real vibrant, bright, sharp-looking pads.
What makes them different?
Well, it's the fill. The wool felt on the inside is a natural felt, and the fleece on the bottom is 100% merino.
Oh, really? Okay. So these are soft and squishy pads.
Well, not real squishy, but soft, and they do absorb shock and saddle fit.
What would they retail for? What are those?
That's about 119.
That's the right price. Yeah. Anything else new with Cashel coming out?
Oh, we've got more saddle pads coming in the fall, new strap line coming in the fall. It's a two-tone that looks great with a great buckle set on it. We're always in development, so there's so many projects in the works.
What's still your most popular product? Is it still always the same things year after year?
Fly. You bet.
Yeah,
fly
that's what we all.
It.
That's how I knew you in the first place was fly masks. Yep.
Yeah, many years ago, we were primarily fly masks and kind of had some tush cushions and a few odds and ends. Today, we've broadened that offering to saddlebags, strap, headstalls, breast collars, bell boots, leg protection, and it continues to grow.
Is there a place where somebody can go and see all the products?
CashelCompany.com will give you a good offering.
There you go. Well, thank you, Tony. It's been fun seeing you again.
Hey, thank you. Good to see you.
Well, Kristen, I was trying to think of like a cool jingle for our Making the Makeover series, and that's just not my forte. That's not my special quality.
Making the Makeover. That's as far as I got.
There we go, guys.
That was it.
Making the Makeover. That's what you got. Anyway, now that you all hate us, I hope you're still listening.
We're not singers, people. We're
not singers, we're podcasters, but we're here to bring you content and embarrass ourselves. But people who are not embarrassed are Making the Makeover series writers coming on today. We are joined by Adriana Nanninni and Julia Jesu. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Hey, how are you guys?
Oh, we're doing peachy. It's summertime. It is the equestrians thriving season, and we're so here for it. And we're super excited to hear what's been new on your radar, because I think you both had some exciting adventures since we last touched base. Adriana, I'll start with you and your cute little thoroughbred pony, Hoboken Jack. Tell us what's been new since we last touched base.
Sure. So Hoboken Jack, who I call Hobo, he went to his first ever horse trial at the Warhorse Event Series May event, which is at the Carolina Horse Park. And that was several weeks ago. But that was after we last spoke on the podcast. So that is technically an update. And I love the Warhorse Event Series because it is so inviting for young horses. We usually ship down there. It's about 5 hours for us. So it's a bit of a haul, but it's totally worth every single mile because we haul down there on a Friday. We get to hack around the horse park and do a little flat and ride in some of the competition areas on Friday. And then there's the official schooling day on Saturday. And then by the time the competition on Sunday rolls around, the horses feel like they've already been there for a few days. So they're pretty cool and collected by that point. So that was his first ever horse trial that he did. And he was awesome in all 3 phases. And he came in 4th there.
Amazing.
And then I was really, really proud of him. And then last weekend, he actually won at the Virginia Horse Center eventing horse trials here in Lexington, Virginia at the Horse Center in the starter division.
That's I need a cheering soundbite or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yes. Congratulations for both of you.
Thank you.
Amazing. And Julia, how about you? How are you and Indian Chancellor doing?
We're doing really good. So he's had a couple of outings since we last spoke. I've taken him cross-country schooling twice, and then we took him to a little hunter show just to get him off the farm. I was bringing students of mine anyway. So we just threw him in a couple of flat classes. The only goal was just to relaxation, get around, keep moving forward, because he has a tendency to get sort of stuck in going forward. I laugh at him all the time because he's made a lot of money. So I know he knows how to go forward, but he just can't seem to figure it out anymore. So we're getting there slowly. But last weekend, I took him to his first little starter trial, and we just did elementary, and he finished in 2nd on his dressage score, which I was super proud of him. Each phase, he just was better and better. He really sort of grew up throughout the whole thing, which was really exciting for me.
Amazing. It sounds like you both had really good couple weeks since we last touched base. And I'm going to start with you, Julia, on this next question, because for those who may have not owned a thoroughbred yet, especially one who's kind of coming off into retraining from off the track, I think there's a little bit of a misconception that they're pretty brave, and they are to their own degree. But they're so exposed at a young age of going to the racetrack, lots of sounds, lots of energy, lots of things happening that I think, taking them to a quiet schooling show might seem like a pretty easy thing to do. But you just mentioned your horse got a little bit stuck in the beginning, but learned to relax. How do you help prep them besides, just getting out there and doing it? What are some of the things you like to do to help him relax in those new environments?
So he is actually very interesting because when I say stuck, I mean, he doesn't want to go anywhere. So a lot of the times, if I'm getting something fresh off the track, we take them somewhere new, they're super, super forward. But for him, that's not the case. So the ones that I get who have a tendency to go somewhere new and get a little bit excited or a little overwhelmed by the situation, I try and find somewhere quiet to take them on the property wherever we've taken them. But for this horse specifically, we were better getting him into the warm-up where there was kind of a lot going on, because then he could just follow the other ponies going around the ring.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different than what I'm normally used to with these guys.
Interesting. Yeah, he just kind of like got picked up in the flow and was like, okay.
And how did he handle the warm-up rings? I know with my thoroughbred, the first time we kind of had, it was a group lesson actually. She thought that we were racing everybody. The first time I brought her in like a group lesson. And her first warm-up was very interesting too. But how did he handle the warm-up ring?
So with this one, it was how we got him to go forward. So he's very barn sour and very buddy sour. And we knew that when we tried him. That was sort of the thing. Like, we went to go look at him and she said, he doesn't want to go forward. That's kind of why he stopped racing, I think. He just got like just really sour to just going forward. So the warm-up ring for this horse was great because he just kept following other horses. But typically, I try not to take them to a busy warm-up for their first outing because it can, like you said, it just sort of fries their brain a little bit. They're not really sure, especially at a hunter show, you've got a lot of different levels of riders. So you have little kids on ponies that kind of maybe don't steer, or people on green horses that don't really steer, and everybody's going, different directions, and that can be really overwhelming. But for this horse, it actually really relaxed him, and it got him just sort of moving forward and just continuing to go forward without planting his feet and stopping.
Love that. I love the different approach and being able to tailor for a different personality. Adriana, how about you? How did Hobo go ahead and handle his warm up and being around other horses?
So I typically, and Hobo is not one of these, but I typically in the past have had horses that are pretty like nervy types and hot types, I suppose you could say. Hobo is not like that at all. So while I'm used to going to a warm up with like my little hot tamale and having to deal with, like Julia just said, all of the people that aren't paying attention to where they're going and all of the riders that don't really know how to steer and people going in every different direction. Normally I'm sort of holding my breath thinking, oh my gosh, is someone going to run into me and my horse that's already terrified? But Hobo is pretty self-confident. He is like pretty big for his britches, to be honest. He thinks that he is the king of the world and not a lot phases him. I would say that the tension doesn't come from the other horses. It comes from other things that he sees. So for example, this last weekend in the dressage warm-up, I actually was able to get him pretty relaxed, and he was able to win the dressage because he maintained a really nice level of relaxation. But what did set him off was our warm-up ring was at the top of a hill at the Virginia Horse Center. And if you've ever been there, you'll know that it's a beautiful hilly place. But when you're up on one of those hills, you can kind of look down and see all around you. And there's lots of different like things going on down below. So he would see that things going on down below as opposed to the horses in the ring with him and think, oh, what's that? What's going on down there? And then at one point in the cross country warm up, there was some golf carts going by and some motorbikes going by and so on and so forth. And those sort of things would cause him to scoot forward and get a little nervous, but not so much the horses in the ring with him.
It's funny. He must just be good at just sort of like phasing that out. Maybe that's how he was successful as a racehorse too.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, I think it's like the Napoleon complex for sure, though, a little bit plays in there.
Yeah, he gets in his own zone. I love that. So one of the things that I always love to see, in the makeover trainers group is people, getting excited about their like light bulb moment or their aha moment with their horse. So I would love to know if you guys have had any of those moments, this spring as we head into summer. So Adriana, I'll start with you. Is there anything that's like suddenly clicked for Hobo that you were like, yes, we've done it. We've done a thing.
Let's see. Yes, actually. So I would say a couple of different things. On the flat, I did figure out that getting him to the show a day or two early really helps and makes us be able to be more competitive. And anyone that knows eventing knows that dressage and the score that you get in dressage is really important if you want to be competitive, because that's the basis for everything. And it's sometimes a fraction of a point that sets you apart from the other people in your division. So I've been able to get him to be pretty relaxed on the flat if I can get there a couple days in advance and school him and hack him around. And then he feels pretty confident by the time we go down the center line. And then also, I would say on the cross country, something that really clicked was I have figured out that if I trot the first couple of fences on cross country, he is much more confident. And then let's say fence 3 or 4, he'll land cantering, and then we'll continue the rest of the course cantering. But if I come out of that start box and I try to force him to canter to that first fence, he's sort of overwhelmed. He just needs another extra second to process what he's about to do. So I think that has instilled a lot of confidence in him, is me figuring out that he prefers to trot the first couple of fences, at least for now.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Like I have a fairly seasoned thoroughbred at this point, and sometimes if the only comparable thing I have is the ranch trail course, but if we have to come in at a lope and go right to an obstacle, he's still like, whoa, so that makes sense. Sometimes that they're like, oh, please ease me into this and give me like a hot second, to figure out what we're doing. So yeah, good for you for figuring that out. Yeah. Cause the reflex there is always like, okay, we're in the start box, let's gun it and go. And yeah, that's not what
it was all trial and error.
Yeah, well done for trialing and erroring the right way. Julia, how about you and your team? Have you guys had any good light bulb moments with Indian Counselor?
So we're still just figuring him out. My first ride on him was the 2nd of this month.
Oh, wow.
So we're still just kind of figuring out like what gets him going forward. He's pretty relaxed sort of all the time, maybe overly relaxed, which is a little bit part of the problem about going forward. But since this is my first year doing a team, it's been really interesting between rides. Summer comes to ride him once or twice a week right now because she's still in school, obviously. And they live about an hour from me. So there's a little bit of a distance between us. Mm-hmm. But it's been interesting on my rides on him during the week, figuring like little stuff out, like how I can get him to sort of relax and drop his head down a little bit, on a looser rein, what gets him to move off my right leg, what gets him to go a little bit straighter, how to encourage him to keep going forward away from the barn. And then when Summer comes to ride him, being able to sort of translate that to her has been sort of the most exciting part of it for me, to sort of help her figure out how to ride him in between her weekly rides and just seeing how he changes week to week.
Oh yeah. That must be fun for her, cause that's a big difference week to week, with a green horse. Like that can be hugely transformative, and all of a sudden it's like, this is a different horse. I know you said those were little things, but those feel like big things, or like things that all add up into big things. So yeah, give yourself some credit there. Those are big things, especially going straight away from the barn. That's the hardest thing to get going.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing for him, is going away from the barn. If we can figure that out, he's going to be fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and that'll be fun too when Summer can ride more than once a week, but that's definitely a commute to the barn. So
yeah.
Good for her. Oh, that's fun.
Well, starting with Julia. So we've talked about some success and some learning opportunities for both these horses. What are you hoping to accomplish this month with them?
So we just actually last night she came and rode him, and we kind of came up with a plan, because I'm obviously juggling my business as well, and also braiding full time, which is sort of a second business. And then Summer and her family are leaving for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks to go to Africa. Oh, so wow. we're sort of packing a lot into the next 3 weeks. So we have a little hunter jumper series that I'm doing with my students, that he's going to tag along to those. And Summer's going to do 18-inch jumpers with him sort of the next, I think the first one's the 10th, and then the following weekend. And then I'm going to move him up, and we're going to take him to Fair Hill for an event. So then, so we're kind of jamming that all into the first 3 weeks of this month. And then he'll get a little bit of a break because both of us aren't here.
Yeah, I bet he'll process a lot in that break and be like, okay.
I think it's
hopefully it'll marinate.
I think it's going to be really helpful for him.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. Sometimes that can be the best thing. It's like, it feels like you're losing time, but you're not, because the horse is going to move forward off a break for sure. So that sounds
exactly
exciting.
Lovely. And Adriana, how about for you? What's in Hobo's calendar for this month?
So my goal for Hobo this month is, being that he just did his first recognized horse trial, I think he's about ready to move up to beginner novice. And I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to do that, but I do think one of my favorite events in Area 2 is at the end of this month. It's Loudon Hunt Pony Club Horse Trials. It's at Oatlands Plantation up in Leesburg. And it's a really nice, like, open gallopy course, almost like an old school type cross-country course.
Fun.
So I really hope I can take him to that and do the beginner novice. And then within that, I also want to make sure that he continues being really confident. So I'll take him cross-country schooling a few more times between now and then. I'll take him to a couple lessons just to make sure that we're staying really confident and feel really prepared. And then I would really, really like to break into the 20s in dressage. I feel like we're so close. And without a couple of mistakes we could have the last couple times, but didn't quite get it together. So I think that that's well within reach if I can ride him properly.
Oh, that's excellent. And honestly, a great goal. I'm like, I would also love to do that. But my horse is not as confident as Hobo. So I'm excited to see what you both accomplish. And same for you, Julie. I'm really excited to see what Indian Chancellor accomplishes over the next few weeks. It's hard to believe that we're 4 months away from the makeover. I know Chris doesn't like when I bring that up.
I'm not ready.
But a lot of exciting times. And this really is like the peak of the equestrian season. So can't wait to see what you both do. Adriana, where can people follow you if this is the first time they're hearing from you?
So Hobo has his own YouTube vlog series. And so if you follow me on YouTube, it's Tall Tale Equestrian on YouTube. And he has his own little show going on. I think we're up to episode 6 now. And then also my Instagram has lots of Hobo spam on it as well. And that's Tall Tale Equestrian on Instagram.
That's a great phrase to take out of context.
Yes. I love it. Julia, where can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Close Up Show Stables. That's my farm page. And then on my personal page as well, which is just under my name, Julia Jesu.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much for joining us and wishing you the best of luck over these next couple of weeks, and can't wait to have you back on to hear about your progress.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If you have 1 or 2 horses, or you have 20, 30 or more, fly predators will make the difference between heavy infested fly problem or a no-fly zone. Balding lab fly predators, catching these flies before they become an issue.
Well, Joy, this week I wanted to ask our listeners how they got into retired racehorses, just because I always think that's kind of a fun journey for people to share. We got some really cool responses on our Instagram story. So Mr. Upgrade You responded, riding horses. Many of my first lesson horses were off-track thoroughbreds, and my second horse was one too. And I actually think this is a super overlooked way that people can connect with the racing industry and with thoroughbreds is through lesson horses. I think there's a ton of OTTB lesson horses out there. And I think that's like a super underutilized way for people to learn more about their horse's racing past. So that's my soapbox for the evening. I will die on that hill. All right. Our girl Lee responded. Everyone's going to think that's her Instagram handle. It's Lee HB. We call her our girl Lee.
Our girl Lee.
She said, getting a horse for free as a broke horse loving high schooler. And I think that's also fairly common that, there are still a fair number of giveaway thoroughbreds.
It is like a gateway drug to the
for
horse
sure.
world.
Yep. And they end up in the hands of otherwise impoverished riders who are like, all right, I got a horse. So
yes,
I love it. Ex-racehorse life coach says the first coach I rode with as an adult had off-track thoroughbred lesson horses. There's another one in that column.
Mm-hmm.
I love this one. Jesse Phillips Music responds, I found one in the newspaper classifieds in 1995.
Oh,
I love that.
Me
Good for that
too.
horse. Because you never know what you're going to find in the newspaper classifieds and you never know where they're going to go. So.
Yeah.
All right. Myatt caught a fish. Lifelong admiration of the thoroughbred. When I could buy my own horse, I picked an off-track thoroughbred.
Oh,
I love that.
She manifested that. Love it.
Yeah, like I love the stories of like, oh, you know, they were lesson horses, they were cheap, they were available to me, but I like that she specifically sought one out. So well done, Myatt Codfish. That's Alyssa. She's a longtime makeover volunteer. Jay Reichel riding. As a teenager, I like that they were cheap. Now I appreciate their patience and athleticism.
Oh,
I love that.
like
I think
that
that's good. I think like people are drawn initially because it's like, this is what I can afford. And then it's like, oh my God, these things are awesome. I think that's a great response. Summer Nicole Long, 2018. I was scrolling through TikTok and saw a new vocations video of the horses and fell in love.
That'll
that might
do
be our first like TikTok convert to off-track thoroughbredism. So
You heard it here first.
And Building Better Hunter says thoroughbreds are my favorite ride always. I love that. Well, thanks for sharing that, folks. I think that's just really cool how people got into thoroughbreds. And like, I think those responses show that there's such a range.
We can't leave without telling them how we got into this.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I don't even know. I don't know my origin story. You go first.
Kristen was born on a thoroughbred. If you guys
That's
didn't know.
not accurate. That's definitely not it.
Well, mine was actually I've always appreciated them. I watched races with my dad on the TV, of course, like we didn't have a racetrack near us. But I grew up with Arabs primarily. I thought that was always what I was going to have. And then I met my friend Kyle Rolfus, who's been on the show a few times here. He's competed in the makeover, and he actually took me to my first race, and he introduced me to my current horse now because he was secretly plotting I would always adopt her. So it worked. It absolutely worked. And she is my best friend to this day. And then we started the show.
That's so funny. Kyle was the first person I went to a canter open house with at an end of meat sale.
I don't think I knew that.
Oh, yeah. No, he drove all the way across Ohio and met me at Presque Isle.
So. We're like Equisisters now.
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
1 degrie of separation, and it's Kyle. So, hey, Kyle.
It's Kyle. Hey, Kyle. Thanks for setting this whole future up, you freaking wizard. Oh,
yeah. I love that. Yeah. So I think like I've always appreciated horse racing. I got a little more into it, in more recent years, and then had always sort of felt a little bit lost in the quarter horse industry because there's just a lot of things going on in that industry that I didn't agree with,
same on the Arab end.
Yeah.
Like your complaints to Jennifer at horseradionetwork.com.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, folks. Just saying my piece. And always just wanted to find sort of like a niche where I felt like I belonged, and saw some videos of the makeover and was like, this might be my jam, because I saw other people riding thoroughbreds Western. Like, in my mind, like when I taught at the university, all the Western horses were quarter horses or paints. And on the English side, there were warm bloods and thoroughbreds, but we didn't have any Western thoroughbreds. It just wasn't a thing. And then I saw thoroughbreds doing some really cool stuff with the makeover, and I was like, I think I could do this. And now I have Jobber, who is hands down the ranchiest horse that I've ever had. So
he sure is. He's a weird cat, but we love him.
That's the best way to describe him ever. So if you would like to participate in a future social segment, just give us a follow on everything. Facebook and Instagram at Retired Racehorse Radio. The Retired Racehorse Project horse listings are back online. We're really excited. We've been working really hard on this for about a year since our new website came out. So our horse listings used to be the place to get a thoroughbred. It was used by adoption organizations, by resellers, by people moving experienced thoroughbreds with show records. We're super excited that they're back now. So if you are in the market for a thoroughbred, whether you're looking to adopt or shop, check out the rrp.org/horse-listings. They're also open to list a horse yourself. So if you are looking to sell or adopt out your horse, definitely take a look into listing your horse. It's free to use. There are also premium upgrades and subscription models available. That's the rrp.org/horse-listings.
As horse owners, we spend a lot of time on the road. Let US Rider help keep you covered. Our equestrian motor plan offers fast, reliable, nationwide service from our highly trained roadside assistance team. 24/7 coverage for both you and your horse. Membership includes horse trailer servicing, towing, flat tire repair, even on dual wheels, battery assistance, and lockout service on any vehicle in your plan. We also have your equine companions covered with referrals for emergency vet services, farrier referrals, and emergency stabling assistance. Get peace of mind on the road for you and your horse. Join US Rider today.
Well, it is that time of the show, and we are bringing on Leandra Cooper from New Vocations to bring us another training tip and introduce our adoptable horse of the week. Welcome back to the show, Leandra.
Oh, thank you for having me, as usual.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. I love that you've been a part of the show since day one, and it's been great. We've been able to open up to standard breds, but so appreciate your partnership and New Vocations as well, because I know our listeners greatly appreciate it.
Oh, well, I'm absolutely flattered. And I can't even believe how long it's been.
I know.
Keep on going.
I know. And we always have a horse to share because there's always horses coming in. It's always great.
Always.
But before we look at this cutie who I'm super excited about, I wanted to ask you a little different type of training question. There's all kinds of tack out there. We know that there's tack for every single horse. But one of the things that we don't always talk about is girths. And how do you pick the right girth for different horses? You have everything from the straight line fleece to neoprene to synthetic. Then you have anatomical. The choices are endless. How do you know what's a good girth for your horse?
Well, I think you just said it. It's what's a good girth for your horse. And it definitely can feel overwhelming when you don't know where to start, especially if you're working with a new horse and you might just kind of have your default systems. And I think understandably, a lot of people kind of start with what they're familiar with. I think of I have this image of what the schooling girth looked like, even from when I was a kid, and very much like a lot of those patterns will come from what's familiar, and that just feels right for some people. But you can sometimes recognize with a horse when it's maybe not right. And I love that you brought that up, because the girth is so rarely what people think about. People
we always talk about bits and saddles, but we're not talking about the other components.
Exactly. And, we might look at different stirrup irons for ourselves, and we might think about softer options for spurs and little things like that. But how often is it really that somebody stops to think about the girth that they're using? And one thing that really made me kind of stop to think about the girth that I was using, because I think for some of them, you could think this works well enough. And I really, I just want it to fit and be comfortable. We think about size, basically, right? And you might think about different options, like the different disciplines. You might need a belly guard for show jumpers. You might consider an anatomical girth because you're noticing the saddle slipping. And so you're looking at it from different angles. But it wasn't really until years ago, I think an equine affair, I saw a stand for Tapestry equine products, and they have this Tapestry girth. And instead of there being, this actually just came up the other day too, and it totally derailing what I was just saying, but I was just thinking about how some of my younger riders don't even really know the righty tighty, lefty loosey, where it's traditional to start on the left side or the right side, because you don't have the elastic on both sides. And I was looking around at my tack room and I'm like, everything is elastic on both sides now. So nobody's understanding that concept of just
those are the days.
Solid leather. But yeah. So I saw this Tapestry Equine Products girth, and it has a neoprene base that goes under the sternum, and it has the standard D-clip and everything. But then it has this the elastic parts of it, and there's 3 that kind of crisscross and weave into each other. And then it has the solid leather at the top. And I was like, well, I've never seen a girth that has the elastic in the middle section of it. And in talking with the person who's at the stand, who was actually the owner, she was talking about how the different types of girths can have such a different impact on our horses in the way that they're moving, and how the energy moves up rather than kind of being restricted. You have more motion options with the girth that she designed, that can enable the horse to have a longer stride and really be able to breathe, because the rib cage expands in a sort of up down motion, from the sternum up, rather than how we might think about it, which just totally got me thinking about this different wave of this piece of tack that we totally take for granted, and how, the different motions can be influenced by even things like that. But it really plays such a critical role, especially when we're tightening it, like, because we rely on that to keep our saddle on. And so we're tightening it and really making sure it's snug on them all the time, even adjusting it throughout our ride. But so rarely are we thinking about like the restrictions that we might be putting on our horse and how the right kind of girth, the right fit, all those things can influence that. So then I kind of I'm a huge fan of the tapestry girth now. And I still use a variety of different girths, but definitely for ones who are girthy, you might think about that differently if you're thinking about the way that a horse might be considering their reflex towards it might be pain, and there might be other options. I really don't feel like I'm addressing your question at all in any way.
I think we're bringing that this needs to be a big discussion. Like, so for me, this question came up where I have a pretty big shouldered thoroughbred, and before I was using kind of just your traditional fleece, just straight across girth, you'd see it at any school. And I'm like, oh, fleece, this is comfortable. This is nice. I didn't realize it was actually restricting her movement, and I needed an anatomical because her shoulders were so big, and the straight was actually causing my saddle to push forward.
Right.
So that was a good life lesson. I'm like, well, I need to know more about girth. I'm like, and she's a sweater. So actually the fleece wasn't the right move for her. And just kind of thinking through that customization, I'm like, why are we not challenging? I think you were right that to start of, we go with what we know, what's comfortable. And I also grew up with like, you only had elastics on the one side. You start from the right side and go to the other side. So everything has changed since then. And you're bombarded constantly of, this is the best product. But I think it's what's the best product for your horse, because one might work better for one horse than another.
Yeah. And that's where it's, maybe we need to be taking these big picture views where we're really thinking outside of the box, especially if that outside of the box of what we know. And I always like to kind of look at different disciplines and how different people are riding, or like even different barns. Everybody's got kind of different ways, and really taking a good look for yourself and deconstructing what we know or think that we know, so that when you run into issues, or if you're evaluating performance, that you're really considering all the different pieces involved. In exactly what you're saying, like, I think people don't necessarily think of like thoroughbreds as having giant shoulders, but like, I actually had my saddle have the panel cut back for the shoulder because I was noticing that so much. And it was from looking at the sweat patterns. And I just was seeing a lot of compression in their shoulders consistently, even with different horses. But, learning how to evaluate the sweat patterns on your horse, or really, like, instead of just going to reprimand a horse who's girthy because that's what they do, like thinking about why that might be, or if something that we can do can change that because their pain might be a response to something that is fixable. So, I don't know that I necessarily have like the answer of all answers, because it can change so much. Right. But I definitely think that they're trying to tell us in lots of different ways. If we're really apt and ready to listen, and with our eyes and our ears, that there's a lot of information they're giving us. And fortunately, we have a lot of options now. It's not the kind of standard old school approach of just like suck it up, buttercup. And there weren't that many different innovations. And
even the Western riders, like, I know we're talking English girths, but like I grew up where it was just kind of the yarn cinch, and that's all you got. Now there's so many options too. And there's like anatomical cinches too, which is interesting.
Oh yeah. I could go on a whole soapbox on that, because I've tried a bunch of those things and have found very different results depending on the horse and the saddle. So totally, and from a practical standpoint, like, not to sound like a total cheapskate, but if you're having some questions about saddle fit, like, trying a new cinch is way cheaper than trying a new saddle right away. So if you're in that position, and then once you get into Western tack, you can change your saddle fit with a pad, the same way that you might change the flocking on an English saddle, changing your pad can really adjust that fit. And that's not to say, if your saddle doesn't fit, just get a different pad. A bad saddle is a bad saddle, but it's a lot cheaper
it's worth trying. Like, if your saddle looks like it's fitting well, the padding looks well, and your horse is showing signs of girthiness, and you've ruled out ulcers or any pain points, if they got sores, ask your friends at the barn. Like, that would probably be my tip. I know we're asking Leandra for tips, but that's what I like to do. I always like to ask, just promise you're going to wash it right after, but try it out, try something different, see how your horse responds. But I was honestly shocked. And even this will be another topic for another day, I promise y'all. But even the way that I was always taught to do your outside and your third billet as opposed to the middle. Now I'm actually doing on my right side, I do the first 2 billets, and then my other side, I do 1 and 3 because she's stronger on her left and my saddle's shifting forward on the right. So I'm actually balancing her out, and I'm like, where was this education in the 90s?
Yeah. Well, and that's the beautiful thing is now we can look at that with new lenses and reevaluate it and make those decisions. And you never know what results you're going to get. It might just be for the better.
Yeah. So team, if you guys would like to hear more, we are happy to pull a saddle fitter on, a girthing expert. You have to message us if that's what you want. But I feel like this could be a very fun table conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But speaking of fun conversations, let's jump into our adoptable horse of the week because he is cute.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Yeah. So this week I decided we would talk about Monition, who we put up online fairly recently and we call Mo. He's a 2018 gelding. He's just around 16 hands and he stands a little bit like his appearance is a little bit smaller than that, but he does have nice sizable withers and he has kind of an uphill build.
I think he's going to be a late bloomer.
Yeah.
I really do.
But the package that he has, there's so much versatility in it. Like you can see how upright his shoulder is in his pictures, and his relatively short cannon bones. And he just like everything about the way he's put together. He needs some muscling. He needs to get back into shape. You can see along his haunches and his SI, like he's lacking a little bit of muscle there. So his booty looks a little small in comparison to everything else. But he's really big barreled, which I don't know that comes across as much in the pictures. So I just think this is a horse who can go in so many different directions as far as discipline. And fortunately, he has no known injuries, so nothing that's really physically holding him back. But I absolutely love English Channel horses, and his sire is English Channel. And along with that, you get some really wonderful bloodlines accompanying that. And I'm not as familiar with his dams lines, but I really think that he is bred and acts in a way that speaks volumes about how he is going to evolve, but his disposition is so mellow and so quiet, and he's just taken everything well in stride. So I'm very impressed with this horse. And, the one like con, I wouldn't even say con, it's like the thing that he needs to work on is that he is kind of scared of the hose, which I think is ridiculous considering that he had a career on the track and like
feels very nitpicky.
Yeah.
Yes, like was very much a horse who was hosed off before, but he acted scared of it. So, we have this kind of tracking system at our levels. And so I think that he got critiqued a little bit harsh on that category by our team. But because my horse is a huge wimp around water too and acts like the hose is not his friend. But very workable, very much something that can be worked on and improved upon. But in everything else, he is easy, really quite exceptional horse. And the only other thing is that he had an injury to his right eye as a foal. So he has some scar tissue in there, but you can't even see it in the pictures. It's nothing that stands out. And he's still very responsive to all stimulus in that eye. So if it affects his vision, it's definitely not hugely so. And we've just been so impressed by this horse so far. And he's just really stinking cute. I like him a lot.
I love his gaits. He just floats along. He's so happy to be working. He could go in any direction. Like you said, Leandra, I could easily see him going into eventing, jumping, dressage, definitely a hunter.
But I could see him being a little ranch pony too.
Yes, he could. And he just wants to please, and you can tell.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to take him home. He'll fit in my little
I shouldn't have watched this
patch.
video. This long and low video of him on the website. I'm like, oh no.
Well, and that's the thing is even though he needs some work in the muscle development, he's willing. So it's not even where you're like, ooh, we really got to hit the gym and he's going to hate this and it's going to be an uphill battle. He's ready for it. And you can hack him out and he doesn't care about anything.
And he looks so smooth. His back doesn't move. I'm watching him canter right now and he just looks chill, even though he's above the bridle, like he's figuring out his balance. Like
Right.
you can tell once he's on it and he knows how to carry his body, he's going to be a superstar. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see Monition and what he does. You can check him out at horseadoption.com. He will go fast, people. I'm telling you, he's going to go fast. But don't worry, there is a horse for everyone here. So check out newvocations.com or horseadoption.com. And his adoption fee is $3,500. Like, this is a horse I'm not even giving numbers, Leandra. I'm going to get myself in trouble, but this is a steal. That's for sure. It's a steal.
This is a nice horse.
Well, I'm about to throw a wrench in this for you because, I mean, you guys are going to be the first people that I tell about this. And so I know by the time that this is published and everything, it will be into June, but we have an all new adoption fee special that will be breaking as of tomorrow. And we're going to be doing 50% off all adoption fees. So we're doing Christmas in June, but this is going to be we don't usually do any other 50% off adoption fee specials except for Christmas. So this is our like Christmas in July, but really June. And that's about to be happening. So
oh my goodness,
coming off that adoption fee by the time this is coming out.
And he is eligible for this makeover. So if you're competing and you have a horse yet, we got one for you.
And he'd be ready to go. You could just
he would be ready to go.
Go take it right there.
Thank you for showing us this like star stopper. I love him. And you can check him out again, horseadoption.com. Get your applications in. They go like hotcakes. They go very quick. So, but Leandra will help you find your perfect horse once your app is in and approved. Leandra, thank you again for coming on. We so appreciate it and looking forward to next time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I'll see you next time.
Well, Kristen, I know you typically kick off our close, but I just have to briefly interrupt to thank a listener here, Caroline Dukowski. If I pronounce your last name wrong, I apologize. But she sent me the most lovely fan mail over the weekend. I won't read the whole thing, but I will summarize the best I can. She has started listening to our podcast in September of 2022 and officially caught up. And yes, she started with episode number 1, and God bless you. That was rough. That was a rough one. We were all learning a little bit that day. And she currently has a 10-year-old half Arab gelding that she's been riding and just enjoying the horse world while managing the full-time job, her family, all of that. Her dad got her into horses, and like many of those interviewed by Pollock Report for the Next Generation series, her and her father went to Arlington Park multiple times a week in the late 1980s. And that was in lieu of riding lessons. So racing was really stuck with her for many years. She actually said that the last Kentucky Derby with Rich Strike, which, yes, I lost money on that Derby, but it was still great to watch. We all did. It was the best Derby of her lifetime, and it boosted her love of the sport even more. She can't remember how she found our podcast, but is amongst much of the material she's tapped into the last year, and she's learned more about racing and how she can support the sport as it's brought her much joy as a child without millions of dollars to be disposed of. She's appreciated many of our guests, such as Gina Rarick, Christoph Hess, Jonathan Horowitz, because she loved the Arabs, Winnie Morgan Nemeth, and anyone from the Pollock Report. And she's brought us some guest ideas too that I'll be sharing. We'll keep those as teasers, but I definitely love what she has to recommend. So I just appreciate Caroline for all of what she shared, and we welcome any fan mail. I don't like to call it fan mail. It's call it whatever you want. Appreciation, guest ideas. We love hearing from you because while we enjoy doing the show, and Chris and I love talking to each other and love talking to our producer, George, we do it for you at the end of the day. And knowing that you're enjoying the content and are able to contribute with your ideas, it means the world to us. So thank you, Caroline, and thank you for all who listen.
I love that. You can find our show notes and links to today's guests on the website at horseradionetwork.com. Like us on Facebook and Instagram, just search for Retired Racehorse Radio. Follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. I can be found on Instagram at The Horseback Writer and on Twitter at Kristen Kovach. My email is kbentley@therrp.org.
You can find me on Instagram at MisfitMare, and my email is joy@horseradionetwork.com. Thank you so much to our sponsors, Kentucky Performance Products and Cashel Company, and to our partners, New Vocations Adoption Program and the Retired Racehorse Project. Don't forget to check out all the other shows on Horse Radio Network, part of Equine Network, at horseradionetwork.com. Remember to set your goals high and love to learn from every ride.
And add more leg.
Bye, guys.